Texas becomes the first state to carry out an execution by lethal injection. Texas, which is the second most populous state in the United States, has executed 596 people since the U.S. capital punishment resumption in 1976 to September 25, 2025, more than a third of the national total. Even per capita, Texas has the nation's second highest execution rate, behind only neighboring Oklahoma. Texas has the law of parties, which allows offenders to be sentenced to death if present while a capital crime is being committed based on the offender being criminally responsible for the conduct of another. 13 juveniles were executed in Texas before the 2005 U.S. Supreme Court decision in Robbery v. Simmons. 29 juveniles awaiting execution were sentenced to life in prison and removed from death row in response to the decision. When capital punishment was declared cruel and unusual punishment by the U.S. Supreme Court on June 29, 1972, there were 45 men on death row in Texas and 7 in county jails with a death sentence. All these sentences were commuted to life sentences by the governor of Texas, and death row was clear by March 1973. In 1973, revision to the Texas Penal Code once again allowed assessment of the death penalty and allowed for executions to resume effective January 1, 1974. One of the youngest inmate executed in Texas was Jesse Darosa. Jesse Darosa, 24, was executed May 15, 1985, for the murder of a convenience store clerk. On August 22, 1979, Darosa, 18 at the time, shot Masoud Ghazali, a 27-year-old convenience store clerk at 7-Eleven, twice, once in the back and once in the face. Deliveryman Rudy Martinez found Ghazali at 4:10 a.m. lying in a pool of blood on the floor of a walk-in cooler. Darosa was the first Hispanic to be executed in Texas since the death penalty was found constitutional in 1976. He was also the youngest to be executed in the nation since reinstating the death penalty. In the early morning of August 22, 1979, Darosa and a companion robbed 2 convenience stores in San Antonio. With a .32 caliber pistol, Darosa shot the clerk at each store. At the 7-Eleven store, Masoud Ghazali, age 27, died from 2 wounds to his head. At the Stop and Go store, Patricia Johnson was also shot twice, but she survived to identify Darosa. His fingerprints were found on a beer can near the cash register at the 7-Eleven store, and another print was taken from the door handle of the cooler in which Ghazali's body was found. Darosa confessed to these crimes. Police officers arrested Darosa at approximately 5:30 p.m. on August 27, 1979, and they arrived at the police station about 30 minutes later. Detective Mahalik took the first confession between 6:45 p.m. and 8 midnight, and the second between 8 midnight and a little after 10 midnight. Darosa was taken before the magistrate for an initial appearance at approximately 10:30 p.m. Darosa claims that the delay in appearing before the magistrate was unreasonable, rendering his confession inadmissible. Darosa does not claim that he did not receive Miranda warnings. Rather, his principal contention is that police officers, after reading the standard Miranda rights card, proceeded to explain what the recited language meant in a manner that was misleading and inadequate. Darosa argues that the paraphrased Miranda warnings improperly linked his right to have an attorney to some point in the future. See, for example, United States versus Garcia. He also suggests that his intelligence, evaluated as between borderline retarded and dull normal, heightened the inadequacy of the warnings because he could not fully understand the formal, recited language and therefore relied on explanations. De La Rosa ultimately argues that he made no knowing waiver of his rights prior to making his confession. The findings to the contrary by the state district judge are supported by overpowering evidence. Several police officers possessing an arrest warrant entered a house, looking for De La Rosa. De La Rosa exited through a rear window, to encounter and be arrested by Officer Vaquera. De La Rosa was handcuffed and taken to a police car. Vaquera was carrying a card with Miranda rights printed in English and in Spanish. He first read De La Rosa the warnings in Spanish, and then repeated them in street-type Spanish to ensure that all was understood. De La Rosa denied that he killed Ghazali, but stated that he would rather die than reveal the killer. De La Rosa became the 7th person executed in Texas, which also put to death the first black in the country since the death penalty was reinstated. Prison officials said the high school dropout was calm throughout the day, napping in the afternoon before visiting with relatives and eating a final meal of classic Mexican food. De La Rosa in March recanted his confession to the murder, and lawyers Rusty Geyer and Ralph Lopez claimed a third person was in the store who could testify. De La Rosa's accomplice, Alejandro Alcorta Garcia, shot Ghazali. Jesse Delaware Louisiana Rosa was executed by lethal injection in Texas on May 15, 1985. Mr. De La Rosa, 24 years old, was pronounced dead at 12:17 a.m., 4 minutes after injections in both arms. He was the 11th person executed in this country that year, and the 43rd put to death since the Supreme Court reinstituted capital punishment in 1976. Mr. De La Rosa was executed for the slaying of Masoud Ghazali, a former Iranian Air Force captain who was shot twice in the head in a robbery of a San Antonio 7-Eleven store. He made his final statement staring at the ceiling, telling his stepmother, Carmen, who was in the death chamber, "I love you. God forgive my brothers and sisters for sins I have committed," Mr. De La Rosa said in Spanish. Mr. De La Rosa's stepmother, who was accompanied by the condemned man's father, Luciano, replied in English, "You'll never die because you'll always be in my memories." His father added, in Spanish, "God forgive my son." Mr. De La Rosa then added, "God, I give my life for my brothers and sisters." When he gasped and buckled, his stepmother began sobbing. She was comforted by his father, who was also in tears. The couple left the prison without further comment. The execution, the third carried out that year by the Texas Department of Corrections, came after 2 days of unsuccessful appeals. The Supreme Court voted 7-2 to deny him new hearings. Then Governor Mark White, as he in previous death sentences, refused to grant a 30-day reprieve. After a steak dinner, Mr. De La Rosa spoke by telephone for 20 minutes to a longtime friend, Margie Garcia of San Antonio, and shortly after 8 p.m. he received communion from a prison priest, the Reverend Stephen Walsh. Judge Roy Barrera, the judge who set De La Rosa's execution date, was a witness to the execution. Barrera felt it was his obligation to attend the execution. He viewed the execution from a different room than De La Rosa's family and friends in hopes of lessening their grief. Thank you for watching Death Row.